Calling the meeting to order. This is the meeting of the North Kingstown Building Committee. First order of business is public comment. Jean, is there any public comment?
No.
Very good, there being no public comment, we'll move to item number 3 on the agenda. The approval of previous meeting minutes from December 11th, 2024.
Do we have a quorum? Yes. Okay.
2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12,
Okay, thanks.
13 members here, so.
Is there any discussion about the minutes from December 11th?
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor of motion to,
Aye.
that's one down, okay. Item number 4 is the review of stage 2 submission to RIDE. Kenny, want to introduce that?
Yeah, so we have a presentation tonight to go through how our approach is for the addendum to the stage 2. We received feedback in November. We've been going through the comments with the project team. And tonight we're gonna share with the committee what it is that we are providing back to RIDE for their comments, as well as the approach for the capacity of the new Woodford Middle School and the capital improvement plan. So Inga Knox, who is our OPM from Jacobs, is here, and Tina, blame on your last name. I don't know why I do that right now. Tina Greco from Perkins. It's like,
That's okay.
the last name was not coming to me. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Because back and forth with emails
Yeah,
all day
no
long too.
worries.
And they're both gonna share the information and we'll answer any questions for the committee.
Just go to slide 3. Okay. Good evening, everyone. So, same presentation as at the school committee yesterday. So we only made a few minor changes, but that's just that we discussed at the committee last night. So basically the goal of this addendum is to maximize the reimbursement for the $137 million bond. We've had several meetings with RIDE in the past few months, and the way we approached it is we reviewed utilization and we're maximizing enrollment to 525 students. Also, there is a demographic study that is being done. It's more of a, I guess, a confirmatory demographic study in a way, because the flow analytics demographic study that the district has, it's a few years old. Is it 2, 3? It's 3 years old, I think.
2020, it's probably started in 2020, 2021. So it's about 5 years now, but it goes 10 years out.
Right, so it's
So it goes to 2031, 32 school year.
RIDE has recommended that that the district performs another demographic study that's more fresh, that may show different demographic information that will support slightly higher enrollment for Wickford Middle School. That demographic study will follow the submission, so we're anticipating it sometimes in March. And also there was several comments that we are addressing, as well as looking into certain comments relative to the budget and to the estimates as well. In terms of CIP projects in Davisville Middle School, similarly, there were some comments relative to the elementary schools. When we added walls, we had to add, look into daylighting, look into collaborative spaces, and educational program. So we had some meetings with the teachers, and we incorporated those comments and the approach into the design of the elementary schools where we added the walls, as well as addressing comments. And we had to slightly change how the budgets were submitted, because we did the budgets by project, but RIDE wants us to combine everything by school, so as a total. and the by project can follow is just like back up to that. Next. In addition to that, in our conversations to maximize that reimbursement and to take advantage of the program, RIDE also recommended that we add projects in case there are savings or there's additional funds are available. So the submission originally was for 141 million, where Wickford Middle was 77 million. CIP's projects in the bond, those are the first priority at 60 million plus 4.2 million that were assumed for secondary funds. RIDE recommended to add another 16 or so million dollars worth of work if there's other things available or funds become available. And we have looked at options with RIDE as well. They do, one of their comments was the master plan and the sort of like the equity across the district, and adding not just the CAP things that you have to fix the schools, but also things that could benefit educationally, and that's where the 2 gyms came into play to potentially add to this program. At
Yeah, so you got,
Stony Lane and
no, not Stony Lane, it's Fishing
Fishing
Cove and
Cove.
Forest Park.
Forest Park.
So if I can just kind of talk about that, just to make sure the committee understands what is happening, because that's a change from the last meeting. So in meeting with RIDE, they want to make sure that we are getting the most back in reimbursement on projects. And so we know that based on square footage of the new middle school and number of students and capacity, there's only so much of the total cost we'll get that is reimbursable of that 35%. And so through estimating calculations and all, it's around like 15 to 16 million that may not be eligible for reimbursement of the new middle school. So they said, take that and put it in your capital improvements. So if you put additional capital improvements in place above what you have, and you have the funding to do that, that's 35% reimbursement that you can get back on those projects. And so when we looked at what that amount would be, and through recommendations from RIDE of looking at all of your schools and making them equitable, we do have 2 elementary schools that don't have gymnasiums. So to ensure that all of our elementary schools have the same type of educational programming and usage of space, the recommendation is to add gyms to Fishing Cove School and to Forest Park. That's if there's funds available, right? This is not coming out of the bond funds. It's similar to what we'd say we would do with the other 4.2 million for the building management systems. If we had the 16 million, we could put that towards gymnasiums on those other 2 schools. The reason why you want to do that now is so that we get approval from RIDE to be able to have that reimbursed. If we don't put that through, then you won't be able to get approval reimbursed and may lose that chance of getting that 35% back. That's why that's in there. And that's an if we have it, it may get done. There's no penalty to this because you have to make sure you complete 50% of your building projects over the 5 years. Based on building a new middle school and all of the other capital improvements will be over 50% of that cost. So even if we don't get to it, it's okay. There's no penalty, but if we had the ability to do so, we would get reimbursement back on those projects. That's why that's added in there.
So does the 16 million represent the 2 gyms?
That represents the 2 gyms, and that's it. A
Okay.
gym to Fishing Cove and a gym to Forest Park.
Any questions about Dr. Duva's comments?
I have one regarding the streamlining the drawings. How you streamline drawings?
So there were some comments in terms of, for example, daylighting for the elementary schools where we added walls like Quidnesset. Because when the Quidnesset, some of those schools don't have windows, and because when you have movable partitions, you don't have to have windows because it's like a one big space. You don't have to have daylighting, and that's all grandfathered in, obviously, it's all old school laws. Right now, there is a code requirement to have daylighting into the school, into the, any given classroom, so you can't have no daylight. We tried to get like a waiver because of the type of school that is, and we're really locked in into some of those space sizes and the classroom sizes and how they work out, because the building wasn't designed for classrooms, right? So it was designed as like a one big open space. But RIDE did want us to look into options, and what we were suggesting, it's really not cost effective to put in windows into the buildings. So what I did previously in some other buildings of similar type is called solar tube. So you put it's basically a system that comes from the roof, and it's kind of like a light. It's 2x2, and it actually dims, and it works really well. It also almost like works like lighting, light fixture.
Yeah. I know
So
that.
the cost is not as, it's more manageable than, and it fits within the budget than the punched windows in the building that requires abatement, requires a structural review of these buildings that are not new, obviously. Additionally, we also, RIDE wanted for the district to look at more collaborative spaces in those schools when we're adding new walls. So we met with the teachers and the end users to understand what it means for them, how it might work. So that's something that we also looked at. And also glazing in a little bit, not a lot of glazing, but some glaze, some visual panels between classrooms to the hallways that was not there originally in the original design, because basically to kind of like have vision, like have connection between the hallways and the classroom spaces, so it's not a complete dark space, enclosed room, and have that sort of better flow. So we did a little bit of that. There were some other comments relative to mechanical drawings. We've addressed those with narratives because some of those were somewhat repetitive, or information existed in the submission but was still commented on. It does happen a lot in my experience with RIDE comments. So we just diverted them back to, oftentimes we just write a narrative and say, see section this, or see page that, because it's just missed during the review.
So kind of reducing somehow the scope.
We didn't reduce the scope,
Well, if you eliminate the windows, you're reducing the scope.
but there were no windows. There are no windows right now.
And so
The-
if there are no windows, where the windows are coming from?
We're not adding the windows, so we added a little bit of glazing in between.
No, I understand
Yeah.
that, but you are talking about reducing, streamlining the drawings, and you bring windows into the discussion of the space. So you are replacing those so-called windows with solar tubes.
There are no windows, so we actually tried to not add solar tubes or not to do anything and grandfather in, just adding the walls, adding up appropriate lighting, and to not have to do the daylighting requirement. But RIDE did not allow us to go with
Okay.
that. So the window, so we could either go with the windows, revise drawings to add punched windows, outside windows for each classroom, or do the solar tubes. And the solar tubes right now seems to be a better, more not better, but cost-effective option, and it works really well in other places of similar type. So.
I got it.
Thank you. Any further comments?
On this particular page,
Yes.
just a quick question. Thank you. The 4% for energy and water and the 5% for safety and security, it's one or the other, right?
So, right, so, the 4% of energy and water, it's one or the other.
Okay.
But so the 5% for safety and security will only apply to projects, CAP projects that have to do with the safety and security.
Yep.
So not all projects will apply.
Yep.
And then the 4% additional will only in Wickford Middle School applies. And we actually talked to the engineers, and they have given us a memo saying that they think that the project will qualify given the net zero approach. so the way this works, I guess, if the entire MOA is submitted at the same time, so all of the work in the MOA, so let's say the memorandum of understanding is for 141 million, but only 132.7 was done and submitted to RIDE as a lump sum like this at the end, then the 4% will be applicable to the entire thing.
So, thank you. So my question would be that the Wickford Middle School will most likely be constructed with energy and water efficiency, most likely, and also provide additional safety and security from the prior middle school, but that doesn't mean we'll be able for 9, it's one or the other.
It's,
That's been
I
my
need to
understanding.
clarify
Okay,
that.
that'd be great, that's
Because,
important.
because the 5% will be only for some projects. So I actually inquired how this works and I didn't get a response, but
Okay.
only some projects will get the 5%. I don't know if some project, if there's gonna be like a little bit more than 4%, maybe it's gonna be 5, I don't know.
I'd be interested in knowing if a school, such as Wickford Middle School, which I would argue is being built and improving energy and water efficiency, as well as safety and security over and above, would we be eligible for 9%?
So Wickford Middle School will not be eligible for the safety and security bonus.
Really?
Right, because 75% of the project has to be allocated towards safety and security. Meaning if like your entire project is,
Wow,
but we can
okay.
talk a little bit about it, but this is the only point that was remaining, and I confirmed that it still exists, it's out there, but in terms of how it applied, that is, we can talk
So even on
about.
our capital improvement projects, where we're doing projects to increase the safety of some schools, because they're not 75% of our projects, we would not get 5% back on them. So
That's
those-
what the law says,
So
but
those security vegetables will not get
the security vegetables will be,
because that is one project.
That one, at that one
One
expenditure.
One project, so that's 100% of that one project, so you get 5% back on that.
correct.
Wow.
This is what the answer I got, but we could talk further.
So then just to elaborate then, and I know you're gonna talk further, but just based on that, it appears that most of our capital, with the exception of the security vestibules, most of our capital, roofs and whatnot, will get 35%.
Plus 4. If you submit it
Energy and
together.
water, that's a good point, okay.
So,
So,
at least
a new
minimum
roof
of
would
4.
be energy and water, okay, so,
Minimum of
so you think that most of our capital will get a minimum of 4?
Right.
Okay. But, okay, so, one last, so, and again, I think you've answered this, but I don't know if I've heard it. So, the new vestibule is energy and water efficient. It's also safety and security. Are we eligible for 9?
I don't know.
Good enough.
What I do typically is at the time of when in May the application is approved, we talk to RIDE and write them a memo with our understanding of how each project will be qualified, and then they would review and they say, if you meet all the requirements as you submitted, yes, you are correct, or they will make some modifications to that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks.
Thank you. Next page.
Additionally, there's also some other things we're looking, and again, those are not necessarily, they're very hard to put and quantify in terms of how much money will be going back, but there are rebates for net zero, there are Rhode Island energy programs for lighting replacement, for instance. So there are many programs, I work with them now, but we have to be closer to design development to know more or less what that entails in terms of monetary impact.
Anything else for page 4? Can we move on to page 5?
Tina, so Tina will go over, she will go over the utilization and the 525, how 525 students enrollment is going to be put into this building.
Yep, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So,
Do you need to use the
Just-
microphone? I think you need, so that people on YouTube,
hello, okay.
Briefly, Tina, if I may.
Yes.
Everybody, this is Tina Greco. Tina is a representative from Perkins Eastman Architectural Firm, who's working with us on designing the new school.
Almost met everyone in here. Nice to see everyone. We were back here in December, and we actually had that really nice exercise where everyone, we looked at, strengths, opportunities, challenges. So as Kenny, to just reiterate what Kenny and Inga have been talking about, there have been these meetings with RIDE. Their intent has been to say, how is it that we can maximize reimbursement? What are some of those strategies? So what they did say is, can you take a look at the building as it's designed and increase, what can you do to increase the enrollment? Because as part of the standard formula for figuring out eligibility, that's one of the places to start. So we did some utilization tests, studies, and these next slides we can go into. I'm going to actually kind of skip over this one just to, here are some of the calculations. Well, actually not quite yet, sorry.
Sorry.
But one of the ways you look at utilization, just to start off, and then we'll come back to this, is you say, okay, well, how many classrooms do I have and how many periods do I have in a day? Because each one of those blocks or periods is an opportunity for utilization. And so that is what this big matrix starts to represent. In the next few slides, I'm going to be talking about the number of core instructional classrooms. The first was where we started, 400 students, and how it's very easy to get to 450 students. And then the second, where we landed, again with that idea of maximizing reimbursement, where it's 21 core instructional classrooms. Okay, so sorry, I did end up spending a little time on that.
That's all right.
Now going to what we call the chiclet slide. These chiclets basically represent, these little boxes represent classrooms. So each box represents, the blue boxes are what we're calling core instructional classrooms, and then these other boxes represent SPED, and then Unified Arts, which is the term used in North Kingstown. Sometimes other districts call them specials, but that includes world language, band and strings, chorus music, art, robotics, computers, library, and then physical education. So Barbara was always so patient to explain so for the Unified Arts, each child is taking 4 Unified Arts, and the cycle, you have an A-B cycle, so it takes 2 weeks for each one of those to see their full use, for a child to see that full use. What we did for the 5, so this is where we started, and you can see we had 18 core classrooms, so 3 per grade. When it was 400 students, easily 22 to 23 students per classroom. 450, each classroom would have about 25, and then you have outside of those core classrooms, the SPED and the Unified Arts. Going to the next slide, thank you. You see how that translates into when you have an enrollment of 525. So things do get, what changes? How do we get there? We use the 25 students per core instructional classroom. That's also aligned with the teacher, the load
The caseload.
Caseload.
Contractual caseload for students.
So each teacher can only, 25 at a time, and a total caseload of 100 students. And then, so to get to 525, we did end up making some assignment changes. And you can see, so in the next slide, when we go to the plans, I'll show you how that happened. But you'll see we reassigned an area from SPED, or resource room. We reassigned world language, and then we did make robotics and computers into one space. That is, again, to see how it is that 525 enrollment works. This slide also, the chiclet slide, does demonstrate how teaming, which is an important part to the educational program, can work. No enrollment is ever perfect. There would be some sort of what we're calling looping or swinging between grades. If we go to the next slide. So this is where we started with the 400, and those light yellow rooms are the 7 unified art spaces. And then if we go to the next slide, you can see same configuration, but we did end up having, to get to 21 classrooms, we have taken one of the resource rooms and we're carving a space. In this scenario, you would carve a space from the library area, which that is sort of a full integration and immersion of SPED into the program. Robotics and computer become one larger space. And then world language actually would be itinerant, meaning that the teacher would use the available spaces. Okay, and then moving on. So then what we get to, so you can see from the utilization, we're looking at a projected enrollment of 970, and we looked at 21. What we did do with this, with the enrollment is we're saying what, 525 of the 970 middle school students at Whitford and 445 at Davisville, and then using an equal number of classrooms in each building, 21 and 21, you end up with 100% utilization at Whitford and 85% utilization at Davisville. And again, this is a strategy that was recommended by RIDE to maximize the reimbursement.
And the 85%, that utilization is well within the RIDE's limits and acceptable.
Thank you, Tina.
Yep, thank you.
Any questions? Yeah, Rob.
Thank you. Tina, I have 2 questions and 1 observation or confirmation. Actually, maybe the superintendent may
Yes.
get the last one. So one's an easy one. On that slide right there, are we saying that the current capacity of Davisville Middle School is 525 students?
That is it's called the functional capacity.
Right.
Yes.
And so I'm not, but is that, so right now, we could fit 525 students at Davidson Middle School?
From a functional capacity standpoint.
What is functional? What do you mean by functional?
It's, they have all these different categories of capacity you could fit. So actually, I'll have to share with you the definition specifically what RIDE uses for
Okay.
functional.
So second question, what would be, and this from an educational point of view, we're okay with combining robotics and computer. And I say that only because I don't have half the knowledge that most of you have around the table regarding that, but it seems like robotics is something very popular at the high school and a very growing trend. And I get a concern that we have now combined it with something else. So are we comfortable with that?
We could, because you're doing similar instruction, teaching computers. Some of those computers would be used for robotics. And again, that is if we go up to 525 at the school,
Gotcha.
right?
Yeah.
We're not saying
Yeah.
that we will definitely have 525 students at Whitford Middle School.
Gotcha.
We are saying if we had 525 students, and if we went that high, that's how that building would be used.
That's how it would
Perfect,
be used,
completely
right.
understand that, okay.
And then just as an aside, on that, where those spaces are, there was, Rob, if you don't mind just going back to that, just as an aside, this, again, it's if this is used, but there is support spaces related to it right there.
Okay, perfect with that, I completely
For
understand that.
storage of
explanation.
materials.
I-
Good question, and
I understand
It's a
that
very big
explanation,
question.
and I understand that explanation, that's a great explanation, which probably explains my third observation or question, is, so with 25 students to a class, I know that meets within the contractual, so if we were at 525, we don't have any concerns about financial issues due to 25 kids in a class.
no, so that would be contractually if we had that many students. We're saying we're maxing the building out.
Okay.
So if we were to max the building out, which is not recommended, there would be 525 students in that building.
If there were 26 kids in a class, that's where it kicks in.
So then once you go one over, that's where you pay an overage
Gotcha,
to.
okay.
Or
That's-
you have the option, which we do, that we then have students redistricted to
Right.
Davisville Middle School.
And again, that's if we go to 525.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Tina.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about,
This diagram also pictures that the 8th grade, 7th grade, and 6th grade all have the same amount of students presently now, you know, like 50, 50, 50. Is it like, you know, where I'm assuming the 6th graders would probably have more 6th graders than you would have maybe 8th graders, or?
Right, I mean, that's a good point, you never have a perfect, you know, the
Perfect
enrollment
three
changes
groups.
every year. And, you know, some of the, so in this, right, you know, there's also, this notion that there could be, you know, there's grade enrollment and between the 7th and, 8th grade, that can be accounted for here. So yes, that always happens every year, there's gonna be some kind of.
And if there's a change in how many, you know, the student population in each grade level, you can look at positioning of the classrooms, what classrooms are being used. If you had to, let's say 10 years out, looking at something, you could do a looping between 7th and 8th grade. You know, there's different options that you can do in servicing the students between the grade levels if you had to. Same thing would happen now if in our current structure. If we had to, say at Davisville Middle School, looking at number of students and students increase, we may have to look at the schedule and the teaming and how we do the teaming there. And we may have to do like a looping of students within the grades.
any further discussion or questions?
The building will be designed for 525 students. And if you get 525, we are fine. If you don't, we are fine still.
That's okay too. Okay. So on item number 4 in the agenda, we essentially have two different things to consider. Kenny, I'll defer to you here. I think we may want to go with two votes. One for the edited CIP that will include the $16 million for the 2 gymnasiums. And the second vote could be for the submission for 525 student capacity plan. Okay? So the first one we'll vote on is the 16 million edited CIP for the gymnasium.
Sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt.
sure.
We're voting on this even though the school committee voted on it last night,
We do, because essentially you wanna make sure that the school building committee is
in lockstep.
yeah.
Right.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay. So, the vote will be, help me with the Robert's rules here. The first vote will be to accept the edited CIP, which will include the $16 million for Fishing Cove and Forest Park gymnasiums, should that money become available. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion?
What happens if you don't get the 16?
And we don't do it.
Then we
Yeah,
lose the
yeah.
ability,
And you don't
For the
lose,
reimbursement.
you don't lose any of the reimbursement.
no, we would lose the ability to have the 16 million reimbursed, or a portion of that 16
You only
million.
get reimbursed for the projects you actually complete, 100%.
It has to be 50% of the application, minimum.
So what we're essentially voting here for is a placeholder, is if we get to that point and we have the available money and we do the project, we will be eligible for a level of reimbursement. If we choose not to do this now, we lose the ability for any reimbursement going forward on these two particular items.
So what happens if the whole budget goes overboard?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
What happens if the whole bond is even falls short of the construction?
So if something came in over, we'd have to adjust as we go through. If we have a project, let's say one of the roofs comes in, the roof is over, we have to go back and have that conversation here at the building committee of, you know, here's the, so as the bids come in, right, we'd be bringing those to the building committee to look and see. So if something goes over, we still wanna continue. So let's say something goes over by, you know, $100,000. I know that, just don't put a number out there. We may have to make that adjustment somewhere else. And that,
Is the plan, I get that, is the plan to still build the middle school regardless of the capital
the
improvement?
middle and the capital improvement, they're two separate.
Yes.
We have,
Correct.
we
Now,
have
we
what
go,
we're
we
dedicating.
go over budget. Like everything else is going on right now in a lot of projects. So this, the middle school is no longer 130, it's 150, 160. So how that works?
The middle school is no longer, so you're saying in case the middle school is over 77 million?
or whatever.
Well,
At the end
hopefully
of the
it
day,
is not.
at the end of the day, you
Right.
are
So we'd have to
kind of
work
a-
on that middle school, and what do we take away from to stay within budget? But there's contingency built in for the inflation in that 77 million.
And the reason I'm asking is because if we still wanna keep the 525 student capacity on the building, and the building is costing you twice as much or even 50% more than whatever, that project is still going.
That's
Well,
going,
there
and
is-
we can look and see what we can make changes to within the building and the design.
Right, so right now, the building is estimated at 77 million. Then
Mhm.
there's 3 more estimates coming, right? Schematic design, design development, and construction document. Hopefully within, and that's the industry sort of standard, we get more, the closer we get to construction documents estimate, the more confidence as a team we have. Hopefully we have confidence in the estimators and the construction managers, estimators as well. So collectively, everything is reconciled. There's 2 estimates, and the 2 get reconciled. And then there is a level of confidence that the bids, actual bids, will come in within that range with the contingencies and escalation in place. Of course, no one has crystal ball. Like something that happened during 2020, where things just 2021 after COVID, everything went up, and all the estimates that were set. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but that was set before in 2019 were already not accurate, right? So, in that case, we have to look at the design, and obviously probably value manage the design if that's the problem, but that is pretty drastic thing. Or certainly, if it's justifiable, you can you can go to RIDE and you can say, well, this building is more, we need to move money from here to there. They do in some cases allow that, but it has to be substantiated, and it's not an easy process, and they don't like that process. But the district can do anything the district decides to do. And if it's justifiable that the building went over by so much, then you can utilize this committee, and the school committee will
But the
decide
district, I
how
just
to
make it clear,
utilize
the
the
district's not gonna do whatever they want to do without going through the process of
Correct.
approval through the building committee, the school committee.
The school committee and
at
RIDE.
that point, it also has to be the town council if we're making changes
Yes.
as well. So, there's 3 hurdles before we can say that we could do anything.
It's not, I didn't mean for it to
Plus
say
RIDE.
that whatever you want to do, but should the approvals go through, and then RIDE is the last one. So,
Thank you, appreciate the question. Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Show of hands. Any opposed?
Yes.
1 opposed, the motion carries. The second vote of this particular agenda item, a vote to accept the 525 student capacity plan for stage 2 submission to RIDE on or by February 15th. Do I hear a motion for that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the 525?
So there's no thought at this point that that increases the cost? It's just shifting space, interior space to programmatically, not
We did not
physically
increase-
increasing
yeah.
any cost?
The size
Okay.
of it's
The building that housed 400, it's the exact same building that houses 525.
Okay.
We squeeze the gates a little bit.
There being no further discussion or questions, all in favor of accepting this motion, raise your hand, aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much. Number 5 on our agenda, accountability and oversight of capital improvement projects and new middle school.
I'd like to make a motion to combine 5 and 6, if that's okay, for discussion.
Sure. Do we have to vote on that?
I think.
How do we move
Or is that a
forward?
point of order?
I mean, yeah, we can discuss both of them, I don't see why they can't be discussed together.
I'm not used to that, Ken.
No.
Okay, thanks. little freedom.
Who's gonna lead this accountability
May I?
discussion? Please do, fire away.
I was the one who asked that this be put on the agenda, these items be put on the agenda, and I'm going to just be very straightforward with these items, so don't take any offense to anything I say, but I am going to, I'd like to bring to everyone's attention that the last 2 years, officially on March 1st is when you guys made the first vote on this March 1st, 2023. And so for the last 2 years, as you know, there has been a lot of turnover. There have been a lot of changes in our administration with staffing, and there's just been a lot of pretty much uncertainty. The first bond vote didn't pass, the second bond vote did, but there were still a lot of questions. I, for one, was someone who had a lot of questions, and I still do. So I guess what I would like to do going forward is to have a very sincere, honest discussion on things like accountability and oversight in terms of the district, the building subcommittee, and the handling of these projects from our perspective, not from Perkins Eastman, Ride, or Jacobs. And one of the questions I had was, for instance, I'd like to know why we did an RFQ versus an RFP. That's kind of like a subset of my questions. But for a big example I'd like to share, as a school committee member and a building subcommittee member and someone who's been coming to these meetings, for the first time yesterday, last night, right before the meeting, I received the stage 2 feedback from RIDE that was received by, I'm assuming, Dr. Duva, and I'm not sure who else, on November 14th of 2024. I do know that we were supposed to also, per RIDE's own guidelines, have feedback from the stage 1. In every stage, RIDE's supposed to give feedback. I find that feedback to be extremely important. In fact, I poured over this after last night's meeting, and then still this morning and today, because it's 4 full pages of feedback from RIDE, and there are some extremely eye-opening things in here that I really wish that every single person at this table could have seen in advance. And again, I'm just gonna be straightforward. I'm not gonna apologize for saying what I'm saying. I know that we've had turnover, and I'm not accusing anyone, and nobody needs to take this personally or, you know, get upset, be offended. But the bottom line is, information has not been free-flowing. This is public funding, this is public money, this is our citizens' tax dollars, including my own. And I feel like these documents should be available to the public. I think that the submissions we do, I know some of them are, but to be honest with you, I'll give you an example. I have been asking for 2 years now, or less, a little bit less, for how much have we paid to Perkins Eastman. I still don't know exactly. Honestly, there were numbers flying around everywhere. We have some payments are encumbered, some payments haven't been paid off yet. The contract from Perkins Eastman, I mentioned this last night, the 50-page contract that we had with them originally from August of 2023 is actually no longer accurate because it still lists the 900-person middle school over at Davisville Middle School. Now, there's a 3-page addendum that was added to it, but again, I said this last night, I'm no lawyer, but I would think that to protect our interests as a district and to protect the interests of Perkins Eastman and anybody else involved in this process, we should probably get an updated contract. We have the whole demographic study that needed to be done. The truth is that RIDE has that in their stage 1 guidelines. We submitted stage 1 a long time ago. In terms of the fact that we didn't know about it as a school committee till January 16th of this year, but we were supposed to have that demographic study done apparently per RIDE. I think RIDE should be here at these meetings. I have a lot of questions for the people at RIDE. I don't know why they didn't tell us before November 14th of 2024 that we needed this demographic study done to the tune of $15,000 more coming out of the bond money. Not coming out of anybody we've already paid, any vendors that we already have. And we actually have already submitted a demographic study that, according to their own guidelines, should fulfill their requirements. And for some reason, it's not fulfilling their requirements, and I still don't know why. And I don't know how many of you all know this information. I'm reading through just this alone, and I'm looking at things like site remediation is not carried out for the project. RIDE offers up to $1 million in site remediation costs. I'm assuming that's being taken care of, but here's the thing, I don't know. So I'm not asking for a micromanagement type of thing where we're getting feedback on every little thing. But we have there are a lot of things in here that actually could let the people in town know what's going on. And I think these documents, I know it's going to take time. I know you went through boxes. Poor Dr. Juva, he went through boxes and boxes this weekend from his predecessors. And I understand that. But the bottom line is it has to be done. We just asked for and promised the town that we would be good stewards of almost $138 million. We have to do the work now. And it stinks, and I know everybody's busy with other things, but this is what we signed on for, so it's gotta get done. We've got a million suggestions for how we can save money, not just the reimbursements, cost-saving things that are suggested in here. I'm assuming they'll all be taken care of, but again, unless I have documents in front of me, I don't know. And you know, I'm a lawyer's daughter. I don't just take people's word for it. I'm sorry. I need to see things in writing so that I can say, if you go back on your word, well, here it is. Historic Preservation Commission, I still really don't know, like, what was the outcome of that, you know, so.
I'll respond.
Yeah, thank you.
So first of all, about the comments, you do have access to the stage 1 and 2, and a lot of those items are in there. So the responses to these comments are going to be C-section SC budget. The site remediation is in the budget. It was in there. All I have to say that we did include it. We're gonna maneuver it a little bit, but it was actually a little bit more than $1 million. They will not give us more than $1 million, but it was included in the budget.
Can I interrupt real quick?
Yes.
When you say we have access to them,
The link that we've shared,
have-
at the time of submission of stage 2, I shared it's actually in one of the presentations, was a link to the entire submission.
We'll reshare what we have going to them on Saturday.
okay, right, and
And
that's,
we'll put that there.
I'm more
Yeah.
talking
We'll
about
get
going
that.
forward.
Right, but I'm just,
versus-
but I would like to just counter comment, and I don't know why you didn't have it's not my purview, why you didn't have those comments, but the comments there, you have to take it a little bit with an understanding. Right, that's the word, sorry.
I figured,
I
it's
kind
an
of
idiom you may
I can't
not.
pronounce it well.
Yeah.
So, with an understanding that some of those comments are somewhat redundant. I do agree, and I do share some frustration in terms of these comments come in over and over again. We see them in stage 3, we see them in stage 2s, I see them in all my other projects, all across, since the 7 years I've been doing this. And all we do, we just say, see, we did include this. We substantiate the answers, we already submitted. Why they do that, I don't know. Maybe they missed a section, it's 5,000 pages. Maybe somebody who reviewed it, they are reviewed by third party. So you know, every submission is not reviewed by Kelia Cantor herself or by Mario. They are reviewed by third party consultants, architects that are hired by RIDE. Those consultants have no knowledge of this district. They may not know the history, they may not know the 2 years of the background. They take the submission, they go through it. I don't think they print all of it because we're not required, well, there's a portal now, so they look at each section and they say, oh, this is missing, this is not this is not there. Then if we have a question, we go to Kelia, of course, to go and to RIDE, to go and dispute certain things. So the comments that we are going to provide, a lot of that already in the submission. There are some new things, of course, and then some of the suggestions about budgets that they make. You know, we have gone through this with the estimator. I'm not the estimator. I don't know if things should be less or more expensive. The estimator, who is a very reputable company, PMNC, they do estimates probably to like 80% of schools across New England. They looked in every item, and you know, right now we're not comfortable to reduce the cost of the building by applying those things, because some of those costs are not, the estimator doesn't see being realistic. They don't have that data. They have a data and they put it in the estimate.
We also wanna make sure that we're not decreasing costs too much, so that way we don't run into problems that other districts are doing.
Mhm.
Right, no, and
that's why we
that's
wanna keep
terrific.
those contingencies
And-
in
and-
there to make sure
yes.
that if there's an increase somewhere, we have the funds to use.
It's just concerning, like you read per square footage cost exceed the typical demolition square footage cost by approximately 200 to 300%. I mean, again, I know you're saying, well, that's just, but that's concerning when I'm reading, 200 to 300%. I could see 10%, 12%. Anyway, so,
So
I
stuff
understand
like
that.
this we'll look into, and then we'll look at why do they think that. So,
Right.
for example, we included in demolition abatement, we included maybe some other things, and they only look at a demolition, like take the building apart. So we go into it and say, which section in the estimate did you actually base it on? So a lot of those things, it takes time to kind of work through, but the comments are sometimes a little bit out of the norm, if I would say.
Which we talked about yesterday. I had suggested or requested that at some of these meetings, I know that somebody from RIDE's been to at least one of them, and then the smaller meetings with you all. But I think a RIDE representative would be helpful to have here, because I know I have.
So I spoke to Mario today,
Good,
already
awesome,
on that.
perfect, no,
So
perfect, thank you.
he's gonna come, well, someone from the school building authority is going to come to one of our next school committee meetings in March.
Okay,
Once we identify what the exact questions are and what we want to kind of get information on, then they will decide who from RIDE will come to that.
okay.
So we're already trying to schedule that, and I'm gonna send an email out to school committee members to find out like what are the exact questions,
Mhm.
so that way they send the right person or people to the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing is, we do have a deadline on the 15th, and these answers will be in there, and of course they'll be made available. And should you have any changes or edits to those, we still can we will be submitting a few things post until the end of the month, and we can do that, because it's an addendum, it's not necessarily like a resubmission. So should you have any comments, in addition, once you read through our answers, absolutely comment back, and, we'll incorporate.
Okay, thanks. And just to add for the people watching and everybody in this room, I was pleased to see that the RIDE feedback requests providing tax impact statement. I think our residents will be really happy to see the official tax impact statement, and that they're asking about team teaching at Wickford Middle School, which I know we were talking about it at Davisville last night during the meeting, but I know team teaching is a big question that parents have regarding these new schools. And the actual number they asked about giving an estimate of how the new Wickford Middle School is going to affect the Davisville Middle School numbers. So just to make everyone aware that when these documents do become available after the submission and the RIDE feedback, these are really good documents to read. So a lot of the public that has questions, rather than going on Facebook, I recommend that you go to these documents. A lot of my questions were answered, then I had more questions, but as you said, and that's why I kind of held back a little bit, because I do know we haven't submitted yet, therefore we haven't gotten their feedback for stage 2. But this is interesting feedback already.
So historic memo was in the submission in stage 2, back in February.
So what was the end result on that?
The end
that you
result
submitted?
on that was, there is a memo that they basically reviewed our application, and they said that they're not in favor of demolition, but if the bond passes, they'll work with the district.
Okay,
That's what,
So then-
in short,
so we can do it.
yes. In short, that's what it said.
Okay.
It was a little bit, the historic commission will never be too satisfied with the demolition of a historic building, that's just what they do, but they will work with the district. There is going to be like a form of remediation, meaning we will have to sit down with them and say, okay, well, we're taking this building down, what would, we will propose something to give them in return. Like something in essence, sometimes they want a report, a historic report of the building, original building, maybe some photographs, something that gets filed away. Sometimes there are displays where people can see it,
We
something
talked about
like
it,
that.
at a few of our building committee project meetings, that inside the new Wickford Middle, we would have like a display case, maybe there's some artifacts,
Mhm.
something that showcases the history of the original Wickford Middle School.
Yeah.
Architectural references
Yeah,
embedded
we
in
really-
the new school. building.
That's important for us. We really do value that kind of thing, because it's the culture of the, and there are even elements of the original building that we have already talked about, how to
Pieces of the
incorporate
brick
those.
or.
Could be student projects, you could have students interview some of the alums from the past, and then you have videos. So there's lots of things that,
Right.
we've thought about how that could.
The tax impact was included in stage 2 from the presentation that was made at the town meeting before the vote, so all that information is available in there. At this point, I would say just wait, of course, because then you probably want to review everything.
Right.
I do recommend that everyone looks at that stage 2 application. A lot of that information is already in there. There's like, I think it's 5,000 pages, so.
Yeah, and I also like to see
a lot
rides.
of narratives on demographics. There is narratives on enrollment. There is all that information. It's not, when you read the comments without looking at the submission, to our defense, I guess a little bit, is that it looks like we didn't submit anything. But we did, and we did substantiate. But because the conversation was to maximize reimbursement, we had to revise certain things to go with the 525. So some of those narratives will get revised, of course, but the information is there and it's available, and it was made available. So
When you say it is there, where exactly is there, just for clarity purposes?
at the time of our submission, we had a meeting. We asked for the committee to approve the stage 2, which was, I'm sorry, it was September. So I think it was September 12th or something. There was a presentation, and in that presentation was a link. And in that link, if you click on it, it's still live and available. There was a whole submission in there. And that's the submission we submitted, but we split it in pieces because it had to be put on a portal. So we have 2 places right now. We have one link with all the 5,000 pages that you can just scroll through, or we have one that's section by section. You can click on section and every document is there.
Where do they, and this is my new guy card being played.
Yeah, that's why we're here.
The people watching at home or sitting at this table, where do they get that link? What is the link? Where could they go to
The
find
link
it?
was
like
in the
today.
Presentation of
So
September
if we go
12th
back,
school
the
committee and school
presentations are
board.
in the facility, under the facility projects page.
On
all
the
of our
NKSD.
school district
presentations are
website?
there.
Okay.
And then once we have the new link, we'll just make sure, we'll just post the link like right on the page or something.
Super.
So
Okay.
we'll just make it
And
very
the
easy.
reason why I didn't post the link right now for the 15th is because it's still in the draft form. As soon as we have it in final form, we can post it at the next meeting.
Wonderful.
Thanks. And
And share it before, of course.
Right, and again, the reason I bring this up is because there has been so much turnover, and sometimes it's easy, and we all get into this habit of, you're in it, so you know all the stuff, but for the lay people out there, who are trying to understand it all, like I just found out last night, like all the meetings that you guys have been having with RIDE, but not with the full, building subcommittee, so this is all stuff, we're learning at, like, us new people, right? We're learning as we go. But also, I'm a talker. I like to communicate, so I just like to get it out there to the public and to let people know that this is what's taking place. For me, if I was just sitting at home watching all this, I would think it was really heavily, we're talking a lot about the reimbursements. But obviously, all this other stuff is going on, so it's important for people to know that once the submission's out there, they can go look at everything that's been submitted, and they can look at ways that you have taken RIDE's advice to help us cut costs without taking things out and value engineering yet at this phase. That's really important for the people who've voted and we're worried about where their money is going to go, especially with all the stories out there about the other districts.
And absolutely, it is, and by the way, all these comments, they're all about reimbursements, not about anything else. It's all about maximizing the reimbursement and maximizing the eligible funds. If the district didn't want to maximize it, we didn't have to answer any comments to still get approved. It's that simple. And in terms of contracts and expenditures, I actually have an expenditure log. I didn't know. I can share it, and I know exactly how much was billed and paid, and for us and for Perkins Eastman and some other consultants that are involved. Rouse.
Yeah, that would be great.
So we
Thanks,
can-
if you have it handy.
That's
And then,
what we do.
thank you, Inga. And then just to bring it back to the original agenda item, so I guess I'm just asking us going forward, especially because you all have other jobs too, besides just working on this pond project. If you have ideas or suggestions, recommendations on how the building subcommittee or I know I have time that I can help. If there are things, you know, you need us to go to meetings or be involved in meetings, I'll email RIDE myself. Mario and I talk sometimes. So I'm just, you know, in terms of the accountability and oversight, I just don't want people to feel overwhelmed with all the other stuff that's going on, because this project could be in and of itself a full-time job. So, just something, I know, well, something to consider, please feel free, I mean, that's why we're on the building subcommittee, right? And by the way, if anybody wants to get off, now's your chance, jump ship now. So that's kind of why I wanted to have this discussion, and I just hope that everybody is well aware of the documents out there, and of documents that are coming up that will be available, because again, there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I just can't update Facebook all the time, or ever anymore.
I'm in some of those groups, I see it.
Right, and I've just gotten off of them, and so that's why I'm trying to just make stuff public
I
here.
still get out from previous bond and from this bond, I see all of them, they're like.
Okay,
So
Yeah.
that's all I have.
very good. Thanks very much, Megan.
The RFQ, I know we were trying to combine, so I called, talked to Mario today also about the RFQ, because that was prior to me. So there's state law, which he was gonna get to me, which I don't have yet, but there is a state law that you have to use an RFQ for architectures to go and do a request for their qualifications. And then once you review those qualifications, you then negotiate with the architect on the price. The other option is going off the MPA. There are architects on the MPA that you can use if you wanna do that. But if you're gonna do that, you wanna make sure you know those architects and who you're going to, because they've already gone through that bid process with the state.
I can clarify the state law, I can send you.
And I was looking, I could not find it, but Mario was gonna send me the state law, so we had
Exactly
it.
where the state law is listed to. So for architects in state of Rhode Island, you have to go through the RFQ process. The difference is the qualifications versus RFP, which is a price proposal. They're used interchangeably sometimes, so it's a little hard to grasp. But the RFQ process is that the architect has to be procured based on qualifications. What you can do to control price, which was not done, and was before my time as well, it was before the OPM was brought on board, which should happen the other way around, but in Rhode Island it doesn't happen this way. And we always talk about it because in Massachusetts it's like that, and it's a lot better, it's a whole lot of much better streamlined process. When we come on board and we know the law. But what you can do when you do the RFQ is in your RFQ, you can say that your budget is this, for example. And then when you select your most qualified first option, you negotiate price. But they already know what you're like, you know, where you want to land. And if you don't like that price, you don't have to accept it. You can go to your runner-up. And then if you don't like that price, you can go to your other runner-up. That's why when somebody is awarded, when the company is awarded a contract, you always say that it's pending contract negotiations, fee negotiations. So that is how it works for architects. For owners, project managers, it's slightly different. The district can choose whether they want to go complete RFQ, which is qualifications, and do something similar, or you can do RFQP kind of thing where you also ask for a price. So the OPM has to be brought in on quals and price. So the district can decide how to level what's more important to you, qualifications or price. It's similar to CM at risk. So where you select based on qualifications, and then we submit to you a price after, and the price is opened, and then it's also factored in to the selection process.
So for our construction management company, what process would we use?
It's a construction management law, which is basically a qualifications and price.
Okay, so
But the
RFPQ.
price,
RFPQ.
I call it RFQP, I don't know. But for price on construction manager is a little bit different, because at the time of them coming in at pre-construction, you don't actually have the price yet. it's not a hard bid. You don't have your guaranteed maximum price because you have to go through your pre-construction process. So you can award them based on pre-construction services only, and then you can also factor in their, which calls general conditions, general requirements, which is their labor and all that. And it's all open book. I can do a whole presentation on it on one of the committees, how it's done. I have like 3 slides. And basically you quantify that, but the actual, the price of the project gets determined by the guaranteed maximum price at the time after construction documents are done, and then it's an open book. For construction management, the reason why construction manager is different from a hard bid is that it's an open book process. When they actually bid the subs that are pre-qualified, the subcontractors, and then a subcommittee or a smaller committee gets to sit at the project team, sits and descopes every sub with the with them, and then it's an all open book process. So you see how much each subcontractor charges, how much money gets moved where, so you get involved in that. When you do a hard bid GC, general contracting, is basically you have a set of drawings, they give you a price, you don't know what's in that price. They split it up how they feel fit, and whatever profit they have, they have. So that's the fundamental difference. And also with CMs, you can do pre-construction, which adds value because you get your estimates done and stuff.
And there's a
like that.
GMP in that particular product, that's the second
And the
one.
GMP is in the construction management.
Right.
It's a guaranteed maximum price, and then there's also a design build, but I'm not gonna go into it right now. So it's a lot.
Cause that's coming up for us.
Yes. And I have a whole
Shortly.
presentation. This committee
Yeah.
can choose what you want to do. There's schedule impact, there's benefits to one versus the other. At the moment, the way the contractor for the architects are written is that it is going to be a construction management at risk method, delivery. It's called a delivery method. Needless to say, negotiable at the end of the day, depends what the committee wants to do.
When will you be making that presentation?
I can do it at the next meeting, in a month.
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah, our next meeting is March 12th.
Yep.
Oh, that'd be good, thank you. And then just one more thing I'd like to, if it's okay with you, tell everybody in case you didn't see the school committee meeting last night is, and while Inga's here, she can verify this, that we are in the process, right, in the middle of a facilities condition index assessment, right, which is very important for the entire district to assess all of the buildings. So I just wanted the public to know and the committee to know that that is taking place as we speak. The last one was done 2016, 2017.
Yeah, so I can just kind of
Yeah,
provide a little more summary of that. So we work with RIDES to get updated FCI, the Facility Condition Index assessments done on all of the schools. So they started that right at the end of the summer. It was like right around the end of August. And now we're waiting for them to do the reports and to get that. So it should be, I think, before the end of the summer, because that would be a full year, but of them doing the evaluations, writing the reports, and getting that to us, we'll have updated FCI scores of our schools. So,
Which is really exciting.
Are those new scores gonna affect anything that we're doing?
we'll see. I mean, if I mean, sure, they could. I mean, what getting those scores will identify other possible needs in buildings. Some of it could be needs that we're already addressing in what we're doing. But once we get those assessment reports back, we'll know.
And a comment on that, after being here for about 5.5 months, I have very clear vision about what has to be attended to within this district. And it aligns very closely with the existing CIP that was created prior to my arrival. I have a feeling, nothing more than a feeling, that this FCI will come out in line with that CIP, to a degree. I think it's a reasonable consideration that will happen, so.
Some of the schools have had work done to them, right? So that will show improvements as well.
There was a fine balance in there someplace with certain scores and
Yes.
reimbursements and things.
So there's no more incentives for higher FCIs, so what used to be more accurate or needed for Wickford Middle School before. It's now for the middle school project when it was combined. Right now, it's no longer applicable because there's no bonus points for higher FCI and stuff like that, so.
Okay, any further discussion on items combined 5 and or 6?
I guess for item 6, just for
Please.
context, as I'm a design professional, I can tell you other states have similar requirements for design professionals for public projects. You do an RFQ, you don't give a price, you give your qualifications, and then you negotiate costs. So this is not unique to Rhode Island or Ride.
Okay, thank you.
It's New England has very similar laws. New York is slightly different but similar, and most of along the coast, both coasts, the laws are very similar. Some states, like when you go further out in the middle, there are some different laws out there, but it's not uncommon, the RFQ process.
Thank you.
Anything else? Any other comments, questions on number 5 and 6? Okay, I don't see the necessity for any votes on those 2 items at this time, other than the discussion that we've already had. Next item up is next meeting date. As Kenny just mentioned, it will be March 12th at this location and the same time as of right now. So that would be March 12th in this room at 4:30 PM.
If there's any items that any members want on the agenda, if you can just send them to myself or to my secretary before, that would be greatly appreciated.
The only item I'd request is if we could have that presentation, I think that's timely.
Yes,
That'd be
I
great.
wrote that down.
Thanks, that'd be real timely, thanks.
Yeah.
Very good. There being no further discussion,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.